Hey everyone, welcome to the RotoGrinders Morning Grind Podcast. I'm your host, Stevietpfl. It's Wednesday, it's December 2nd. And of course, if you're new, welcome. If not, Wednesdays is NFL breakdown time, first look podcast. As always, I'm joined by my good buddy Genie for 07. Grant, 11 games, week 13. Week 13 already. How are you doing, my friend?
Oh, I'm doing just fine and dandy. It's a great looking slate. I think there's a lot of spots that people are just going to overreact to last week. We don't have a ton of massive totals. I think we only have one team over a 30 implied team total, and we only have a few teams over 25. So it's actually a pretty interesting little slate here. I've been diving into it all day, and I'm excited to break it down with my buddy Stevie.
Yeah, so I always kind of look at NFL like Tuesday and kind of start looking at preparing like the week, and then like I really start digging in on Wednesday. And there's a few spots that are interesting on this slate that we'll get to as we're going through here, but it's one of those weeks where are you going to trust the New England running back in this situation?
Nope.
So like they have one of the better spots on the board. So it'd be interesting to see. But we get started here. Week 13, Saints, Falcons, 46 total. Saints favored by 3 in this game. What do you like here for the Saints?
So it's an interesting spot here for the Saints. Like, I think some people are going to overreact to last week. Taysom Hill, like they had a very specific plan in place last week, which is they knew they were going up against Hinton. They knew that they weren't going to be able to get much done on offense. So they just ran the ball with Murray, and it was an easy game. So I don't think that's going to happen again. I think people are going to overreact a little bit. Michael Thomas sitting there at 7K, only had 6 targets last week, but I'm really not buying into that. We look at Taysom Hill's pass attempts last week, and he only had 16. Grant, he only had 23 the week before, but it was a specific run heavy spot. Now they're going up against the Falcons. The Falcons have been a lot better than people realize. Their defense is better versus the rush. I think that Taysom Hill's going to throw the ball around a little bit more. It's only a 3-point spread. I like Michael Thomas here. I like Michael Thomas at 10K or 7K. I think he's going to come close to 12, 13 targets in this spot. And I think he has a decent shot at a touchdown. Taysom Hill's pretty much just taking the rushing touchdowns every single time. So I like him. I don't mind Kamara, but it's not a horrible spot to do a little Taysom Hill, Michael Thomas stack and hope that Taysom Hill rushes in a touchdown to Thomas, which, I mean, have we ever seen Taysom Hill throw a passing touchdown? No. So there's a first time for everything.
They just played like the first game that like Drew Brees was out. Like Taysom Hill played against Atlanta and put up 25 fantasy points with 2 rushing touchdowns. A lot of difference in price from then till now. He's in play for me. Just like his rushing upside makes him more interesting. And like last week, they didn't really need him to run, and he still had 10 attempts. So I think like if you're looking at Taysom Hill, you're just kind of playing him for his rushing ability, his rushing upside. I don't mind pairing him with Michael Thomas, but it's more because Michael Thomas is 7K. Taysom Hill's first start, Michael Thomas had 12 targets. Like that game against Denver is a straight cross-off for me. I'm not even looking at that game, Grant, because it was just how fast can we get this game over with? That's how Denver approached it. I'm not looking at that one. I do like the Saints defense here as well. I think they're a little interesting. Ryan throwing the ball around. I'm off of Alvin Kamara right now. Until Drew Brees comes back and Taysom Hill's not starting quarterback, I think Kamara is a guy that I'm going to probably pass on. I do think his price is a little interesting at 7K, but I think it's Taysom Hill. It's Michael Thomas. What do you like here on the Falcons, assuming that Julio's back this week?
If Julio's back, I don't mind Ridley. I don't mind Julio. Like it's a tough matchup here, and I mean Matt Ryan is a good quarterback. He can put up a boatload of yards, but not getting the rushing upside. I'm just kind of off of him. Hasn't had too many outbursts this season, so it's strictly Julio or Ridley for me. I'm really trusting the running game, even if Gurley does come back. Like Saints are the second DVOA defense so far this year. They've been good. They only have a 21 implied team total, so Ridley or Julio, just based on volume, is not the worst idea in the world. But outside of that, I'm just kind of off everyone.
Yeah, like I'm kind of with you. Assuming that Julio's back, assuming that Todd Gurley's back, I think this is going to be a spot that, like, I don't love Atlanta. I will say, like, if Todd Gurley plays, he's not the worst play at 5,300. But overall, I think I'm gonna probably stay away from this Atlanta offense. Outside of like Julio's 6,600. If he plays, like, just he's gonna be a higher owned guy for me. He's just too cheap. Like,
Yeah, he always gets us one time during the year. Every year, like clockwork.
It's just too cheap, man. This is like the second time this year he's been too cheap. Cincinnati Bengals, Miami Dolphins, 42 total. Miami favored by 11.5 in this game. This game opened at like 11, and like Miami is trending so much already that it's a half a point on a Wednesday. So is there anything here on the Cincinnati Bengals side that you even want to remotely think about playing?
I mean, I'm not going to argue with Boyd or Higgins at their price tag, but that's really it. Like, it's not a good spot. Miami defense has been pretty good so far this season, top 10 in terms of pass defense, but it's strictly the price tag and the potential volume if they're coming from behind on Boyd and on Higgins. Either one of them can put up a decent outing, but outside of that, like, I'm not playing Bernard. Like, even up against the run funnel, I don't see the game going being very close. So it's a cross off here for Cincinnati outside of a few one-offs at the wide receiver.
Yeah, I don't think I could play Gio in this spot either. I'm kind of with you. Like, Boyd's okay. He's under 5K. He has the upside. If you want to punt tight end, Drew Sample had 5 targets last week with Brandon Allen at quarterback. Brandon Allen's going to be facing some pressure in this game from Miami. So, like, if you want to take a shot, Miami has allowed the 11th most fantasy points to tight ends over the last month. So I don't hate Drew Sample as like a punt tight end, but more than likely not going to play him. On the Miami side, obviously, I like the Miami defense in this one. We're going to have to kind of wait and see what happens with the running back situation. Gaskin could be back. Ahmed could be back. If Fitzpatrick plays, Parker gets a huge increase, in my opinion. 14 targets last week with Fitzpatrick at quarterback, 3 for Hollins, 2 for Grant. Like, that's what he does. Fitzpatrick throws the ball to Parker and the tight ends. What are your thoughts here when it comes to Miami?
Yeah. So if Gaskins ends up playing, I like him. We all saw what he was doing prior to getting injured. We know that Miami's going to run the ball a decent amount, and they kind of stick with one guy pretty much the entire game. If he's out and Ahmed's in, you can roll with him. Like, he'll get a decent workload. But if Tua comes back, I'm just off this Miami pass offense entirely. If Tua isn't back, then yeah, Fitzpatrick, Gesicki, Parker, all fantastic plays as they are every single week. Grant still priced there at 3.5K. I know he didn't get a ton of work last week, but still a cheap punt wide receiver. But it's Parker and Gesicki. Like, Parker got 14 targets last week. He didn't end up with a touchdown, and that's what kept him from being a just massive play. But he can absolutely get a touchdown or two. Like, we saw his upside last year. He's got 4 touchdowns on the season with Fitzmagic behind center. Like, he can absolutely go off for a big game. And Gesicki finally got into the end zone last week, which is sad because it's one of the first times I didn't really play him too much. But yeah, that's where it's at. And if 2 is out, then I'm just full on fading the entire pass offense and just rolling with Gaskin.
Yeah, that's kind of it. Miami defense isn't a great spot. They're so expensive though, man. 4,400 for a defense is just, it's a lot to, like, if you end up on them, I don't hate it, but like, I'm not going to prioritize them at that price.
Yeah, you don't really need to pay that price tag unless it's the Saints last week.
Well, like, even the Saints last week, like, how many times did they throw the ball? Like 9, 11? Like, even last week, I wouldn't have prioritized the Saints. Like, the upside, the ceiling from like the interceptions and sacks weren't going to be there. I don't know.
Well, I think they dropped 2 interceptions. Like,
I know he threw 2 and like they dropped it. I know that. I'm just saying, like, it's just, you're paying. They were some ridiculous amount. Like, We talked about this on the review show. Like, if you ended up on the Saints defense, that was fine, but prioritizing them over some of the utility players or position players, I don't know if I could have done it. I didn't do it, Grant. I didn't do it.
I mean, the main thing was there was enough value, so it made a perfect kamikaze of trash that ended up making me lose money. I had 60% Henry, and I still lost money.
Oh man. Even this week, we're going to talk about the Green Bay defense way later in the podcast. With Carson Wentz throwing and as bad as he is, they're $600 cheaper than the Dolphins defense. I would prioritize the Packers defense, and as crappy as they are, before I'd play the Dolphins defense.
Yeah.
So, and there's some cheap defenses too. So, Jaguars, Vikings, 52 total. Minnesota 9.5 favorites in this one. Let's start with the Jags. Mike Glennon announced this morning that going to be the starter again this week. Obviously, what we're gonna have to wait and see on DJ Chark and those guys if they're gonna be back. Is there anything that's standing out to you here for Jacksonville?
I mean, Robinson is price tag of 7.3 with the workload that he's getting, his pass game production, his potential touchdown upside. The Vikings defense is not great. They've been kind of worse in recent weeks. It started off season bad, got better, and then got worse. But they're not great against the rush. With Glennon under QB, they're probably going to rely on the run game a decent amount. He's getting 20 touches a week, and he's a real workhorse back. And we know that Minnesota can give up a massive amount of points to opposing running backs. So Robinson, no matter what, is a fantastic play. The passing game, it's a little bit more up in the air. Colin Johnson came out of nowhere and just crushed my hopes and dreams because I had a lot of Shenault and Keelan Cole. If Chark ends up coming back, if Conley ends up coming back, then it makes it a little bit more muddy. But if both of them are out again, I'll go right back to the well. Jaguars don't have a huge implied total, but Mike Glennon's sitting there at 4.8K. Still put up 18 points last week against a kind of similar matchup. I'm willing to play him in tournaments, stack him with Cole and Shenault, or Cole and Colin Johnson, or Shenault and Colin Johnson. You're just getting such a huge price savings on those guys for a double stack, and being able to bring it back with Cook is just a huge benefit. So you have your full-on game stack ready to go, and you're getting Cook in it, and you're not using a ton of money, and Cook's going up against a terrible defense. So if Chark's back, I'm just kind of out on this passing situation for the most part. But if Chark isn't back, then I think that there is some value to be had here. And there's people are going to remember that Cole didn't do a ton last weekend and Shenault didn't do a ton last weekend, but I could see them easily putting up a big game this week.
So if Chark is out, do you roll the dice on Colin Johnson?
I'm basically let's say I have 10% Glennon. I'm going to probably roll with 6% Colin Johnson, 6% Shenault, 6% Keelan Cole, or something like that, where it ends up being about evenly split between those three. Cause I'm not playing the guessing game. Any one of them can go off. Shenault can get 8-9 receptions. Cole can go off for a 50-yard touchdown, and Colin Johnson may be just in love with Mike Glennon, and they have great chemistry. I don't know. It's a 1-week sample size, but I'm not going to overlook a game where Colin Johnson got 8 targets, and because wide receiver is so just up in the air when a new quarterback comes in. You have the guys that it's pretty much a guarantee that he's going to be throwing the ball to them, like McLaurin. Then you guys got guys like Jamison Crowder, where when Flacco's at the helm, doesn't really fit his game style, wants to do more downfield passing. But if Sam Darnold's in, then Crowder's going to get 13 targets like clockwork. So chemistry is a big thing with wide receivers if you don't have a star one. And so I have to take some shots on Colin Johnson, and even Tyler Eifert at 3K. He got 4 targets last week. He can be a touchdown guy. So tight end, never a great position. So Eifert's in play too, but this is all kind of dependent on Chark not playing, because if Chark plays, I think that we probably see Glennon zero in on it, because we saw it with Minshew, we saw it with Foles, we saw it with there was another guy in there. Why don't I remember his name? It was mostly irrelevant.
Yeah, I can't think of.
Luton.
Yeah, Luton. Yeah, that's how much of an impact he made on us. Just keeping it real. Yeah. So like overall in this one, like I just wanted to pound it home one more time. Like James Robinson's in a great spot here. Like,
yeah,
just wanted to point that out like one more time and just hey, like this is it's a really good spot for James Robinson. And then on the other side of things, like I know Dalvin Cook busted last week. We go right back to the well on him in this spot. This is another great spot for him. I do worry a little bit about them already coming out and saying they kind of want to keep him fresh down the stretch. Jacksonville, their defense stinks. They're 32nd in overall DVOA. They're 31st against the pass. They're 26th against the run. Thielen should be back. This is a great spot to attack the Minnesota offense.
Yep, 30 implied team total. We know where their offense is at. It's Thielen, it's Cook, it's Jefferson. So you play Thielen, Cook, Jefferson, sometimes only one of them in every lineup, sometimes two, sometimes full on stack it. It's just the total's so high and their offense is so condensed that you gotta think about using them quite a bit.
Yep. Like Thielen, Jefferson, Cook, Irv Smith, if he comes back, I'll probably stay away from the tight end situation just in general here, but love the passing game. Love Dalvin Cook. I think this is a great spot for him, and they should crush Jacksonville in this one. Raiders and Jets, 47 total. Raiders favored by 7.5 in this game. Bounce back spot for the Raiders. What do you like here for Vegas?
I really like Vegas in this spot here. They're going up against the worst pass defense in the league, coming off a game where they looked horrible, just absolutely horrible. Is anyone going to be on the Raiders and they have a 27 implied team total again? I don't think anyone's going to be on them.
I think people will be on Waller and Jacobs, assuming Jacobs plays.
Yeah, no, like it's just such an interesting spot. We've seen them put up big fantasy outings multiple times, like not as much Carr, but he's going up against the worst pass defense in the league. Aguilar has been fantastic this season for no apparent reason, and he still got 6 targets last week. Like they just looked out of sorts last week. They just weren't playing well. Now they get a matchup versus the Jets at probably low ownership. I'm going right back to the well because this is essentially the same spot last week, only better. And they're going to come in at lower ownership. Yeah, I know that they just crushed my soul last week. But Aguilar, Waller, Carr, Jacobs if he plays. If not, Booker is a fantastic play. Like, if the Jets have the 8th ranked rush defense in terms of DVOA. They have a good rush defense. So you have to assume that they're probably going to be slinging the ball. I mean, Gruden's a smart enough smart enough coach where he's going to prep based on the matchup. And yes, he'll still run the ball a decent amount, but we could see them slinging the ball all game long. And I just don't see a lot of people playing them because it was such a letdown. And maybe I don't want to play as much Carr, but Aguilar and Waller are fantastic plays.
Yeah, and like this could be a spot Henry Ruggs like has 2 long catches and one of them's a touchdown, and he has a big game too. So I'm with you. I like the Vegas side of this game. I think and I don't love the running game. Like Jacobs is banged up, dealing with an ankle injury. So like this is a spot that it's Carr, it's Aguilar, it's Ruggs, it's Waller. I don't hate Derek Carr here. 5,800 going up against the Jets. Like we loaded up on Ryan Fitzpatrick at 5,500 going up against the Jets last week. Like why aren't we talking more about Derek Carr this week already? So, and then on the Jet side of things, like we have some run backs. Like Sam Darnold, he didn't target Crowder as much as I thought he was going to. Like he went to Mims and Perryman a lot more than I expected in general. So I think like when you're looking at this, Perryman's 3,900, Mims is 4,100. We have run back options, Grant.
Yeah. No, I don't mind any of them. Yeah. Perryman had 8 targets. Mims had 8 targets. Crowder didn't get locked onto as much as I had hoped, but it was a tough matchup and they just didn't put up points. Like this is more this is a more favorable matchup. Like Raiders are middle of the pack in terms of pass DVOA. They give up a lot of points to opposing wide receivers. So I don't mind any of them. And Perriman, just look at his target totals, 8, 4, and 7. Like for a 3.9K guy who has some downfield effectiveness, that just doesn't make. He's had double-digit points in 3 straight weeks and over 20 points in one of those matchups. Mims is talented and 8 targets in the last 3 weeks, and he's only 4.1K. Like, stacking up this game is not a bad idea, especially like if you're going to do a little bit of a secondary stack. Don't play the quarterbacks and just roll with a few of the wide receivers in your lineups. It's not the worst idea in the world. I think that this could be a much higher scoring game than Sean. It's currently at a 46 or 47 or total in this game. I think that could go over here. Everyone's going to overreact a little bit to these teams putting up like single-digit outings last week. I don't think that happens again. I really like this spot for the wide receivers for the Jets just because of their price tags.
Do you have any interest in Frank?
I'm not playing Frank Gore.
Listen, I have to ask. Like the Vegas run defense is that bad that we at least need to bring it up. I think
so cheap.
I know. Like I think on FanDuel or like Yahoo, you can make an argument for playing Frank Gore.
You can always make an argument for taking 10 to 15 points for 4.4K guy. It just makes me want to vomit a little bit.
Have to get that touchdown. Like you have to get a touchdown. If Frank Gore does not score a touchdown, he is not going to get there. And like the Raiders run defense is so bad. Like Vegas run defense is so bad. Like you have 2 bad lines, like a bad offensive line and a bad defensive line. It's just like it's possible. It can happen. But I think that, you know, you could potentially look at playing Frank Gore, and it makes me woozy to even think about it, Grant. Another game that I like this week, the Colts and the Texans, 51 total. Colts favored by 3.5 in this game. We're waiting on Jonathan Taylor news. I think that news is going to be big, you know, especially when you're looking at the matchup, because if Taylor's out, like we just go right back to the Nyheim Hines train here, right, Grant? Like you just play him again.
I prefer Wilkins. Like
either one, like that's fine too. That's fine.
Yeah, I mean the main thing is last week they were trailing pretty much the entire game. Like Wilkins is going to be more heavily involved if they are ahead. And yes, they're only a 4-point favorite, but this is an indie team that just never really seems to do exactly what you think they're going to do. But like I prefer Wilkins. Wilkins is $1,100 cheaper. Everyone's going to be on Hines over Wilkins, and he's more dependent on that pass game work. I mean, he got there last week because of the 10 targets, whereas Wilkins only had 4 targets and only 6 rush attempts because they need Hines in there because they had to pass the ball. They were down a lot. So I really like Wilkins in the spot here. If Taylor ends up missing, I think that he's a fantastic GPP play. I don't mind Hines, but if I'm playing Hines, I'm almost certainly assuming that Houston's going to be up so that they scored a decent amount of points. So I'm probably playing a decent amount of Cooks with him. Like you have to bring it back with Cooks, but Wilkins you can play as just a standalone, like assuming that they are ahead and Wilkins gets a decent amount of work. But yeah, and I'm willing to go right back to Pittman. Like Pittman had 9 targets in the last game. He didn't do anything with him, but Houston is not a great defense. Bottom of the pack in terms of pass and run DVOA. Like Pittman just had a tough job. Hilton finally had a decent game, but I'm not playing him. He still didn't have that many targets. Pittman with 9 targets last week, 8 targets 2 weeks ago. He's still getting there for the most part. He didn't last week because he just couldn't catch anything, but he's going to see the volume. And I don't think many people are going to play him after what happened last week.
Yeah, I don't hate taking a shot on Pittman, T.Y. Hilton, Trey Burton, any of these guys. I think they're in play. I almost think that Phillip Rivers is in play. And like it's really borderline. It's gonna definitely be determined on like how some news plays out this week. But you got to think like Russell Wilson's on the slate still. So like he has the upside to break the slate, but like Patrick Mahomes is on the slate, Josh Allen's not on the slate, Lamar Jackson's not on the slate. So like some of these rushing like quarterbacks that like give you that rushing upside, not necessarily on the slate. So I think Phillip Rivers is a little interesting against this Houston defense. They're just not good. But again, it's just more of like, I don't know. In that price range, there's 3 or 4 guys like you could pay down to Baker Mayfield at 5.3K against Tennessee. So it's tough. On the Houston side of things, we do have Deshaun Watson on the other side. And he is someone that can break defenses. Indy defense started the season fantastic. I think they were playing a little over their heads. They've had some injuries that have kind of knocked them down a little bit as well, but it's hard not to like Houston here. But we have to remember Will Fuller's out, so it's Cooks, it's Kuti, it could be Coulter, it could be Stephen Mitchell, Jordan Akins could see a tick here. What do you like here for Houston?
Yeah, you got to love this Houston passing attack. Without Fuller in there, yes, it does take a bit of a downgrade, but that's mostly just affecting Watson. Cooks, Coutier should see a massive uptick in terms of receiving work. Akins and Fells, like they're probably going to run more 2 tight end sets. And like Akins obviously just dropped everything and ruined people's day the other day, but still a guy with a bit of upside, some touchdown upside if he can actually catch the ball. But Cooks and Coutier are fantastic double stack options. Cooks is way too cheap at 5.6K. Probably going to be one of the chalkiest players on the slate, considering he should get an uptick in usage. He's been fantastic this season. That price tag is just way too low. Even going up against an NDD that has been all right versus the pass, has not been the same in terms of pass defense recently. And like you're getting the most upside out of Watson on the slate of pretty much any quarterback outside of maybe Russell Wilson. You summed it up perfectly. Like Watson to Cooks is going to be the chalkiest stack of the slate, and rightfully so, just because of the amount of volumes Cooks should see and because of Watson's upside.
Yeah, like I don't know who else to really add. Like, I don't know if this is a Duke Johnson spot. Like, if you end up on Duke Johnson, I don't hate it. His price increase scares me a little bit. Like, the Colts run defense has been struggling a little bit more against the run here recently. Duke Johnson's going to run a ton of routes. So, like, there's the upside in that. It just really kind of comes down to how you think this game is going to play. If you think Indy is going to be up in this game, then you can take shots on Duke, more on DraftKings where you get the full point for catches. So Cleveland and Tennessee, 54 total, highest total on the slate. Tennessee favored by 5.5 in this game. Let's talk the Cleveland side of things. Cleveland loves to run the football. Tennessee has struggled to stop the run, but their pass defense is not much better. Is this a week that we potentially look at like a Baker Mayfield, Jarvis Landry combo?
I think so. I mean, I think it was the OG podcast. They were talking about it a little bit. But this is that was the first game where they didn't really have to deal with wind. So they've been playing in a bunch of wind games since OBJ went out. And like they finally got a decent matchup, which this week is another good matchup. And Landry just went off. I think a lot of it kind of depends on what the game script is. I think Landry is a great guy to pair up with Henry because they're probably going to have to be slinging the ball. But Landry, he's mostly a lower ADOT guy, but it's been a little bit different since he got over to Cleveland. I think that he's going to get a ton of targets in this matchup. I'm just worried about his ownership. Do you think people are going to play him a lot after that massive outing? I think they might in this matchup.
I mean, they might. His price, I think his price keeps people off of him. 6.2K. Julio is like 6.6, like just to compare, like in that price range. So I think overall, the price would be the thing that keeps Landry's ownership down here.
Well, in any case, I don't know if I'll play much Baker just because I don't think he's going to throw the ball enough to really get there. But I will play Landry, and I don't mind the running back situation. Yes, Tennessee's been better versus the rush than they have versus the pass, but Cleveland's going to run the ball a lot. Chubb had a good outing last week. Hunt did not. And I know he hasn't been great in the last few weeks, but still getting a decent amount of volume. Had 10 rushing attempts in the last game, 2 targets. It was mostly they are going to run the ball more with Chubb because were up in the last game. This game, they're likely to be down. So I think it's more of a Hunt game. His price dropped down to 5.4K. I think that's too cheap. I like Hunt. I like Landry in this spot. And it's an easy bring back with Henry.
Henry, Brown, Davis, Jonnu Smith, like there's plenty of options to run it back here. It's December, and
it's December.
As our good buddy Soccer Dave likes to say, it's time to play Derrick Henry. Listen, the Cleveland run defense has been decent here recently, but overall in the season they haven't been great. I think you continue to pound the rock with Derrick Henry here.
Yeah, so a lot of people are going to look at the Cleveland run defense over the last 4 weeks and see what they've done. But again, I already mentioned it. Win games. When you know that people can't sling the ball downfield because there's 30-mile-per-hour sustained winds and 50-mile-per-hour gusts, they're going to run the ball, and you can just load up the box. So the run defense has looked pretty good in recent weeks. They haven't given up a ton of points to opposing running backs, even though the volume's been there more. They've been really slow or low-scoring games, a lot of punting, a lot of 3-and-outs. So the run defenses look better, but overall in the season, it's still not a great run defense, and Derrick Henry is an absolute beast. Like, it's December. We see it every single year. He's gotten the massive workload each of the last 2 weeks. I mean, the guy's getting right there to 30 rushing attempts every single game. It's going to continue. They're going to just run the ball with him over and over again. So, yeah, I absolutely love Derrick Henry. I don't mind A.J. Brown. I think if you're playing A.J. Brown or you're playing Corey Davis, you bring it back with Nick Chubb, who shouldn't be that heavily owned. But if Cleveland's up in this game, they're probably running the ball a decent amount with Chubb. And so it makes a nice little correlation play, stacking Brown or Davis with Chubb. So I am going to go drastically towards the Derrick Henry side just because nothing about it makes sense, but I don't care. It's December. He's going to get tons of work. Just play Derrick Henry and hope he doesn't have a bad outing.
Yeah, and like his price, if he does not score some touchdowns, like multiple touchdowns, like you're in trouble. It's just like Dalvin Cook's price at 9,500. Like these guys need multiple touchdowns. Because like Robinson has the workload of like these other guys, and he is $2,000 cheaper. So like it's just kind of pointing that out. Just looking through like some of these guys price wise, there are some cheaper options that have workload that could potentially get there. So we got the Lions and the Bears, 44 total here. Chicago favored by 3 in this game. Lions cleaned house as far as the coaching staff goes. Any interest here in Detroit?
Swift. That's if he ends up playing. If not, I don't really want to touch this running game. I don't want to touch this passing game going up against Chicago. They only have a 20 implied team total. Detroit is a dumpster fire. Maybe with them cleaning house, something changes. They've had 10 days to prepare. There's always that new coach narrative, but it's just not a good matchup. Like Chicago's a good defense. They're number 4 overall in DVOA, good against the rush, good against the pass. Swift would be the only thing that I would think about just because they might end up using him a lot more because why the heck were they giving AP so much work anyways? And then Swift finally got a full workload. He had a fantastic outing. They can bring him all over the place in the receiving game. So maybe they end up doing that again. So it's Swift for me, and that's really it. Just because I don't want to touch this horrible offense against a good defense.
I don't hate taking a shot on like Marvin Jones if Galladay's out. I highly doubt Galladay plays. Yeah, I highly doubt he plays. So taking a shot on like Marvin Jones as just the volume for Marvin Jones, I don't hate it. But overall, probably going to stay away. Hawkinson's super interesting. Chicago, the one thing they have struggled with this season is tight ends. So if you want to play Hawkinson, this is a team that's allowed the second most fantasy points to tight ends this season. So, I think that Hawkinson is in play. Chicago side, it's hard not to love David Montgomery, but it's so hard to love David Montgomery because it's Chicago and the Bears, and assuming it's Trubisky, like Montgomery's in a great spot and he's 5,500. He didn't get a price increase because the Packers game was on Monday. This is a great spot to play David Montgomery. It's just it's the Chicago Bears, man. Like, it's so hard, Grant, to love someone that plays for the Chicago Bears.
I love Allen Robinson.
That's fine too. I get it. I just like
the Detroit secondary is banged up a little bit. Like Allen Robinson, especially with Trubisky at the mount or helm, is going to get targeted tons. Like Detroit's not a good defense at all. Like they're not a good pass defense. And again, they've got some injuries. I love Allen Robinson in the spot, and I don't think he's going to get a ton of ownership. I think he gets 15 targets. I think he has 2 touchdown upside. He has 100-yard upside. Like, I love Allen Robinson in this spot. He's the guy I will go with. I'm fine with David Montgomery. I just hate it every time I roster him. It could go well. It could go terribly. He could be entirely mediocre. I don't know what I never get Montgomery right. So I'm not even going to weigh in on it. Just do whatever you want with him. But I love Allen Robinson in the spot.
Yeah, I get it. Man, it's hard not to like Montgomery here. I do like the Allen Robinson call. He's going to get a ton of targets. Trubisky loves to target this guy. That's it for this one. Let's not overthink this Chicago. The Chicago defense is in play as well. You can go Montgomery Chicago defense if you want to correlate that way. Rams and Cardinals, 48.5 total here. Rams favored by 3. Rams site neutral wise, they're a pretty fast paced team. We know Arizona's a fast paced team. I expect this game to be the fastest paced game on the slate. What do you like here for the Rams?
Cooper Kupp. I'm not touching the Rams running game as has been what I've done pretty much the entire season outside of 1 week where Henderson destroyed all of us. I've learned my lesson. But Cooper Kupp, I love here. Like, you're not going to get much more upside than Cooper Kupp. It's a fast-paced game. It's not a bad defensive matchup here. The Rams have been decent, good versus the pass, but those short and intermediate passes, I don't think they've been that great. They're mostly just good, or the Cardinals, they're mostly just good at, like, kind of letting guys dig into them a little bit. But Cooper Kupp we've seen 13 and 21 targets in 2 of the last 4 games. The other 2 was a weird game versus Seattle where they were up and they had to just run the ball. The other one was versus San Francisco, who's a better than they seem defense. Like, Cooper Kupp's an outstanding play here. And he's really the only thing I want in this matchup just because it's going to be such a high-paced game. There's going to be volume there. There's a decent chance that the Cardinals are leading. Like, Cooper Kupp is the one guy I really want from this game.
I think you can look at Robert Woods too. Both of these guys, I think the Rams are back to that we're going to throw the ball a lot type of mentality. Like Jared Goff, 36 attempts per game this season. He threw 51 times in week 11. So if they get behind a little in this game, like Woods and Kupp should crush. Reynolds, if you want to be different, he's in play, but like the passing game, don't play the running game. Like it's just look at last week, for example, 34% to Henderson, Brown 42%, Akers touchdown, 27% snaps. Like just don't play these guys unless you like 7 fantasy points. Then you can play those guys. Let's talk about the Arizona Cardinals side of things here. Christian Kirk continues to disappoint me, but I'm going to continue to play Christian Kirk because I know his upside. I think if you want safety, you go DeAndre Hopkins, but Kyler Murray is in a great spot here too. Like his rushing ability gives him upside. The Rams defense on paper is really good. So like, yes, sign me up for a tough matchup for Kyler Murray in this Arizona offense because they'll be lower owned because of it.
I'm so worried that there's something wrong with him. Like last 2 weeks, he just has not looked right. And I get it was a matchup versus the Patriots. Like Belichick can scheme against any quarterback, but I don't know. Like, yeah, I'm never going to argue with Kyler Murray. I'm just worried about things. I'm probably staying away a bit. The Rams have allowed the least passing touchdowns in the league. I still think that's true. And they're fourth in pass DVOA. Like it's tough. It's tough for me to pull the trigger after what's happened the last few weeks. I'm sure I'll have a few shares. I'm fine with Hopkins. I'm fine with Kirk, but it's mostly just taking a shot on Murray in tournaments, hoping that he ends up with a 100-yard rushing game here. And that's really all I want.
I get it. Man, like Hopkins, his upside is so high too. I don't know, man. It's tough not to like some of these pass catchers. The problem with this one for me, Grant, is like I like the Rams side a lot in this game. So like I like Kupp, I like Woods. I want some run backs, and I think Hopkins and Kirk are interesting. Maybe Kyler doesn't make the cut. Fine, but secondary sacks are still a thing. So I don't mind potentially looking at some of these secondary guys. Giants and Seahawks, 48 total. Seattle favored by 10, one of the highest implied totals. Daniel Jones, very questionable to play. If he doesn't play, it'd be Colt McCoy. Is there anything that you like here for the Giants?
Gallman has been fantastic for some reason. He has a rushing touchdown in 5 straight games, 6 straight games, whatever it is. It doesn't make sense to me, but he's getting all the work here. They might rely more on him now that Colt McCoy is going to be the star, although I don't think he's actually a downgrade to Daniel Jones. But yeah, he's getting 20 attempts a game. He's getting massive touchdown equity. Seattle defense is not great versus anything, although they have been drastically better in recent weeks with the addition of Dunbar, with the addition of Adams back into the fold. Like their pass defense hasn't been bad in recent weeks. So like it's just Gallman for me is really the only guy that I want a piece of. I mean, I'm not going to argue with Ingram. You can play whichever one wide receiver you really want to, but it's Gallman. It's pretty much it.
Yeah, like Shepard, I think is in play. I think Golden Tate's in play. Like we're going to have some Russell Wilson, Metcalf, Lockett teams. So like running it back with Slayton or Tate or Ingram. You know, you mentioned Gallman, like any of these guys, like it's the Seattle pass defense, man. They're 29th in DVOA this season. Their run defense has been a little bit better, but like they're allowing the most fantasy points to wide receivers and quarterbacks this season. And like as much as they throw and stuff, like it's hard not to like some of these Giants pieces, even if it is Colt McCoy at quarterback.
They've been running the ball a lot more, which is leading to less high-scoring games. And they like their pass defense has been a lot better. I mean, I'm a Seahawks fan. Maybe this is biased, but like they held Kyler to not that big of an outing. They held Wentz to not a great
Wentz
outing.
Stinks.
Yes, Wentz stinks.
Like let's be honest. Wentz is not playing really good right now.
But they were putting like a ton of pressure on him. Wentz, yes, it's terrible, but like they've been better these last few weeks. They weren't able to get a pass rush at all earlier on in the season. And then in recent weeks, with the addition of Dunbar, like that makes a huge difference. And Adams wasn't there for a lot of the beginning of the season. Now he's back, and he's a guy that can blitz, that can do a whole bunch of things, and helps out the secondary a lot. Like their pass defense isn't nearly as bad as they once were. Yes, they are by far number 1 on the season in giving up points to opposing wide receivers and quarterbacks, but most of that's from the beginning of the season. If you look at the last 4 weeks, they're number 6 in fantasy points given to quarterbacks, number 12 in terms of wide receivers. Tight ends have actually done pretty well against them, so be more apt to target Ingram. But like this isn't the same pass defense that we saw earlier on in the season, which a lot of that too was more a result of the matchup going up against Atlanta. Patriots was terrible, but Dallas, like they've had a few matchups that are going to be high scoring regardless because of pace. So I think a lot of these numbers are skewed. If the Giants aren't going to be high owned, yeah, go ahead and play them. But if they are actually going to draw some ownership, I don't think it's worth it.
Let's talk about the Seahawks side of things. Hey, DK Metcalf is really good at football. Chris Carson's back. Like you said, they do want to run the ball a little bit more. What are your thoughts here when it comes to Seattle?
I'm mostly fading, honestly. They do have a 29 implied total, so I won't full on fade. Russ can obviously put up a huge game anytime, but averaging 215 yards passing the last 2 games, one of which was against the second highest paced team in the league. Against LA, didn't have a ton. Like, it's been 4 weeks since he's actually had a decent outing. Russ is going to draw some ownership because of the total, but I don't think it's really worth it. Like, DK Metcalf, I'll play him anytime, anywhere, for any reason. The guy is just a beast. And realistically, had 27 points in the last game. He should have had 35 points, 36 points, because he dropped an easy touchdown pass. Like, DK Metcalf is in play. Lockett's always in play just because he has a potential for a huge game. But I really don't have a ton of interest in Seahawks this week. And I think they're going to garner a ton of ownership, and I don't think it's worth it.
Yeah, I think Metcalf, Lockett, Wilson, Carson, like very condensed offense. Those are the 4 guys that I want to play here. Moving on, we got the Patriots and the Chargers, 47 total. Chargers favored by 1 in this game. I kind of, threw a cliffhanger out there, Grant, because when you're looking at a slate, you love taking running backs against the Chargers. They're 31st in DVOA this season. But, like, I played a lot of James White last week. I could definitely see going back to him. But, like, Damian Harris, they ran 2 running backs last week. It was the first time all year I can remember that, like, it wasn't, like, 3 guys involved. If they're going to give Damian Harris, like, 15 carries and, like, potential for the upside that he has, like, in this matchup, like, this might be a week that we have to even look at Harris, but I still think it's Newton, it's White, it's Myers. You can even throw Bird in there. Like, I like the Patriots here because I love the Chargers side of this game.
White was such an interesting scenario last week. Yes, he got 2 touchdowns, but he had 5 carries and 1 reception. Like, Chargers' run defense is terrible. I think it's going to be more of a Harris game. Like, Belichick just always screws me over every single week. I'm more apt to go with Cam Newton. Cam Newton's in at 5.8K. Like, the Chargers are a bad rush defense, but they're also not a good pass defense. They've given up 30 points, I think, 6 of the last 8 games. I know that Cam Newton is not good, but he can occasionally have one of those massive outings versus a bad defense, and I think that's what this is right here. It's being played in a dome. Like, Cam Newton's had multiple 300-yard passing games this year, and it's been against bad defenses that give up a lot of points. Houston and Seattle. I think that this is a spot where he's going to go off for a big game. I think he has rushing upside. I don't really want to go with Harris because I think that's where a lot of people are going to go. So I'm going to go with Cam Newton, pair up with Bird, Myers, or Harry. Like, I think one of them goes off for a pretty big game here.
I don't hate it. I really don't, because I love, like I said, I love the Chargers side of this game. I think this is a great spot for the Chargers. The New England defense stinks. I don't care what anybody says. I'll argue it against anybody. This defense stinks. This is a spot. You can play Eckler with Herbert. You can play Herbert and Allen. I think people might overreact too much with the game that Allen had last week, but, like, he's still the guy. Hunter Henry had 10 targets last week. Like, plenty of options here when it comes to the Chargers.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, like, Patriots are such an interesting defense because they're horrible, but occasionally we can see what happens, like with the Cardinals last week. They can shut down opposing offenses occasionally, but I like Herbert here. I like Henry. I like Allen. I like Eckler. Bill's going to probably shut down one of these guys, but there's enough options where I don't think it's the worst idea. If you're not playing Keenan Allen, throw in Mike Williams. Like, Mike Williams is still an absolute athletic beast, and he can get 2 touchdowns. He can get 100 yards. Like, Henry, Allen, Eckler, and Mike Williams are all fantastic plays. And even Guyton can end up with a long bomb occasionally, and he's super cheap at 3.1K. Like if Bill shuts down Keenan Allen, Herbert can still go for 350, 400 passing yards in this spot. So I'm going to stack this Chargers side up all over the place.
Go for it, buddy. I'm right there with you. Like I said, I really like the Chargers in this spot. We finished it out with the Eagles and the Packers, 47 total. Green Bay favored by 9. Is there anything on this Eagles side that you trust with Carson Wentz at quarterback, or even like Hurts at quarterback?
I mean, it's real tough to trust anyone, but Miles Sanders, but like Boston Scott got a lot of work last week. I don't understand anything here. Like I'll take a shot on Sanders, hoping they ends up with a decent workload. But I'm not trusting anything outside of maybe Goddard. Like he still got 10 targets last week. He's got 6 the week before that, 6 the week before that. Like he's getting steady volume. He's priced at 4.3K. It's tight end like scarcity. So it's really just Goddard and Sanders for me because this is just a full-on dumpster fire.
Yeah, like Sanders is fine. Goddard is fine if Ertz doesn't come back. Like, I don't know. I think in general in this one that like I don't mind some Sanders because like the Packers run defense isn't the best. But overall, I'm probably gonna stay away. I like the Packers defense. I like Aaron Jones. I think it's an interesting like combo this week. You can always play Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers. Like it's just one of those games where on paper I don't love this one.
Yeah, I mean it's mostly Adams to me. Yes, Aaron Jones can get there, but like if he's gonna come in at low ownership, you play Aaron Jones. But people started playing him so much because he went off to that fast start to the season, and then just hasn't really done a ton since then. Yes, he was injured for a little bit, but Jamal Williams is still in this backfield, still getting a decent amount of work. I'm going to check out ownership. If Aaron Jones is going to come in at low single digits, I'll play him. Like I'll absolutely play him. But if he's going to draw some ownership, I don't really have a desire to play him. It's mostly Adams for me. Every single week, he's getting around 10 targets, 12 targets. He's getting a touchdown every week. He's got massive upside in any given matchup here. So it's Adams for me. I don't mind throwing in Rodgers there with him just because Rodgers can still go off for a huge outing at any given time. And he hasn't had less than, 23 fantasy points in 7 weeks. He's priced under 7K. Like, it's Adams and it's Rodgers for me.
That's it on this one. I don't see anything else. Like if you're playing Green Bay, you know the pieces to play from Green Bay. Like it's as simple as that. Let's play the morning grind game, and then we'll get out of here for this week. Looking at quarterback, give me a quarterback that's going to throw for 300 plus yards this week.
I'm going to go super off the board here and say Cam Newton.
For 300, I like it. I'm not going to go too far off the board, but I'm going to go Derek Carr. Give me a low-owned running back for a touchdown.
It's a little tough with ownership not being out. And my computer is not really cooperating. There we go. Now it's loaded up. I'm going to go with Wilkins.
Wilkins. All right. It's your boy. You better hope Taylor doesn't play.
Yeah.
Man, do you think David Montgomery is going to be chalk?
I don't think so.
I'll say Montgomery. I don't know if he's going to be chalk or not, but like I said, he's one of my favorite plays this week, so we'll see. What about a quarterback wide receiver stack for a touchdown?
I'm going with Aguilar.
Are you taking my guy?
Sorry.
No, I meant like I took Carr a minute ago.
Yeah.
Let's see. Quarterback, wide receiver, touchdown. Give me Jared Goff and Robert Woods. Wide receiver for 8+ targets this week.
Going the other side and going Cup.
I like it. Never can go wrong. I'm gonna go with a guy under 4K. I'm gonna go Bashard Perryman for 8+ targets this week. Give me a tight end that scores a touchdown this week, Grant.
I'm going trying to find a lower. Okay, you know what? I'm going a little bit off the board. Will Disley.
All right, I like it. This guy burned me last week, so I'm gonna go back to the well on Jonnu Smith. Defense to score more than 10 points.
I'm gonna go with the Raiders.
All right, I like it. I always try to find like a really cheap defense. There's like defense is tough this week. Give me the Chicago Bears. Chicago. Any final thoughts? The Bears.
No, just if you're listening to this podcast, realize that they shut down practice Monday and Tuesday, so a lot of news we probably don't have right now. So watch Grinders live on Sunday and get a little bit more accurate news. But just it. And the Steelers-Ravens game is officially a go. Gosh, I'm excited for Wednesday afternoon football.
And Jonathan Taylor just got reinstated, so that changes a little bit. Like it hurts Hines for sure.
It takes Wilkins off
Wilkins off the board for sure. So, do you have any thoughts on Taylor? Assuming that he's a good to go,
I'm probably staying away from the Colts running game. I'm probably staying away from the Colts outside of Pittman and Burton.
Man, I probably have some Jonathan Taylor up against Houston, 5,700.
I just hate playing Jonathan Taylor.
I know, but it's Houston, man. Anybody can go off against Houston. I don't know. Bottom run defense. I think Taylor's interesting.
Yeah. I don't think he's that great. I don't trust any Colts running back.
I'm also a little bit more interested to kind of look at FanDuel really quick just to see.
I'd be more apt to play him on FanDuel.
I was trying to pull up. Oh, I had single game, full roster Sunday. Last week of the single entry series on FanDuel as well for RotoGrinders. So last week we could get that nice $100 single entry tournament that we've been playing. He is 6,400 on FanDuel. I really like Jonathan Taylor on FanDuel. I think him and Montgomery make for some really good mid-range options if you're not getting Dalvin and Henry there. So that's going to wrap it up here for week 13. Grant, always fun, my friend. We'll be back next week talking some more football. Good luck in your contest, and we'll see you guys next week.
Hey, kids.